Hey guys, it's your humble host, or Kim if you prefer. So I'm back with another video. I have some news to share with you guys about what's going on in Texas. For those of you who aren't aware yet, Attorney General Ken Paxton released a 13-page letter regarding puberty blockers and trans medicine for children and classified it as child abuse. The article we're going to read is going to be in the link in the description below, and it's also going to have a link in the article itself to the 13-page letter, which read at your own leisure. So without further ado, this is by the CBN News Christian Perspective. I have yet to run into an issue with these guys in regards to lying about stuff. So anyway, we're going to use this article. Largest U.S. pediatric hospital cancels puberty blocking trans treatments for kids after Texas called it child abuse. The nation's largest pediatric hospital has announced that it has stopped transgender therapies for kids. The move comes after Texas Governor Greg Abbott ordered the state's child welfare agency to investigate reports of gender change treatments for children as abuse. Now, let me also touch upon that too, because you had a federal judge who blocked the motion of the state being able to investigate into trans families, blocking the motion, forcing CPS to start investigating trans families. So I believe we talked about it in the last video, how you had one individual, one woman who's working for the state, refusing to hand over medical documents. Again, these people don't want this stuff found out. They want all this stuff hidden, much like Aunt Georgia list with James. Anyway, continuing on, Texas Children's Hospital located in Houston announced that its decision to stop such hormone-related prescription therapies was made after it reviewed Abbott's order. The governor's order came after Republican Attorney General Ken Paxton released a non-binding legal opinion last month labeling certain gender change treatments as child abuse. CBN News reported Paxton released a formal opinion saying performing certain sex change procedures on children and prescribing puberty blockers to them is child abuse under Texas law. Now, for those of you who don't think that does not happen on teenagers as early, or children as early as 13, 12 to 13, possibly 14, I actually posted something on my channel, which you do have doctors in Texas who will do it with parental consent. So yes, this is happening in Texas. This is being done on minors. These sex changes, these hormone therapies, cross-sex hormones, the whole bit. People have been trying to say, especially when Matt Walsh released his book, Johnny the Walrus, a lot of trans activists came out and said, well, this isn't being done on children. Yes, it is. I'm sorry you live in your bubble or want to push your freaking arrogant bullshit, but yes, it is. And a lot of people are waking up to it, thank God, in about time. Let's continue. Paxton gave his legal opinion in a 13-page letter. Again, that's a link to the letter, so you guys can read that at your own leisure. To Republican State Senator Matt Cruz, who serves as the chairman of the Committee on General Investigating in the Texas House of Representatives. Cruz had previously asked the state attorney general if certain medical and chemical procedures on children constitute child abuse. So I want to say this is also the fellow that Jeff has spoken to. He spoke to one of the senators, and there was one or two of them that tried to help get the Save James bills passed last year. And I believe that Senator Matt Cruz is one of the fellows that was helping them do that. And not to mention, I'm going to link something below as well. For those of you who are familiar with Dad Talk, Eric Carroll, he actually got to sit down with Attorney General Ken Paxton as well and asked him the same, if not similar, question. So I will put that in the link in the description below as well. In this letter, Paxton noted certain procedures performed on minors, such as castration, fabrication of a penis using tissue from other body parts, which is not natural, and there's been reports and medical documentation. It's called a phalloplasty, I believe, and it eventually falls off. Fabrication of a vagina involving the removal of male organs, prescription of puberty suppressors, and infertility inducers. So yeah, this stuff makes you sterile, which I've always believed that part of this is body control, preying on the vulnerable, the weak-minded, the physically disabled, the medically traumatized, the abused. So I've been saying that for quite a while, so have many other people. Now, as for this, because you can't ever replicate an actual vagina. It's going to continuously close. People have to dilate forever. Guys who get this procedure to try to be a girl will end up dilating forever and being hormones forever. So you are, as I've stated in multiple videos before, you are medically dependent on the government for life after getting this procedure. The mission of Texas Children's Hospital is to create a healthier future for all children, including transgender children, within the bounds of the law. This step was taken to safeguard our healthcare professionals and impacted families from potential criminal legal ramifications, the hospital wrote in a statement released Friday. After the hospital's announcement, Paxton tweeted, "Glad to hear that today Texas Children's Hospital halted their child abuse procedures." And it is child abuse. It is child abuse on a psychological, mental, physical, medical, and social level. It is beyond the mark. As CBN News has reported, some medical centers around the world are taking a second look at how to treat children with gender dysphoria, which should not have been to try to socially transition them, affirm them, if anything. And there's many documentation study shows that there is quite a few reasons as to why people feel the need to transition or feel like they're opposite sex. You have trauma involved. You have medical stuff involved. You have how they grew up in the home, the lack of parenting, how they see themselves. Again, I've told this story before. One story that I actually got from a guy who was trying to live as a chick. He was ashamed of his changing body during puberty, and he literally said he had a voice tell him that this is not for you. So he automatically felt like he was a woman. I'm not shitting you. This stuff is beyond. It is, how would I describe it? A mental stronghold of delusion. It's not factual. It's not based in any realm of reality. It is all fictional and delusional, and ends up costing the person who goes through the procedure, goes through the process, a great deal of heartache and pain. And not to mention, because I brought it up on this channel before multiple times, they've talked about the statistics of suicide among trans people, which is at a higher rate, especially post-transition, because of synthetic hormones. Let me repeat that again. For those of you who have actually taken the time to study the effects of birth control, which is the use of synthetic hormones, anytime your natural body hormone balance is out of whack, you can get suicidal, you can get depression, you can get all sorts of other problems. These are all recorded in just simple documentation of women using birth control. That's just birth control, synthetic hormones, synthetic progesterone, synthetic estrogen. Okay, so in May 2021, a renowned Swedish hospital announced they're no longer prescribe puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones to minors under the age of 16. Which, again, so as I said in my last video, all it takes is one state to put their foot down and go enough, and it's going to have a ripple effect. This is having a ripple effect. And you've had many organizations come out and reconsider their stance. You have organizations in the UK. So again, this is a good thing. And a lot of people go, well, you're hateful. No, I'm not. This should have never been an option to begin with. This is experimentation. This is Nazi Germany concentration level shit. Okay, let's continue. The hormonal treatment of children and adolescents with gender dysphoria may consist of puberty-blocking treatment initiated on the onset of puberty and cross-sex hormones initiated at the age of 16. The Karolinska University Hospital located in Stockholm said in a statement, "These treatments are controversial and have recently become subject to increased attention and scrutiny both nationally and internationally. They're not backed by the FDA, and the way that the hormones are used and hormone blockers is not backed by the FDA. This makes it challenging to assess the risk-benefit for the individual patient and even more challenging for the minors and their guardians to be in position of an informed stance regarding these treatments," the hospital said. And it's not, here's the thing, is there's information that's hidden, it's not forthcoming, because it all goes against the narrative. The narrative is this: with trans medicine, it's supposedly life-saving, it will prevent the individual from committing suicide, and it will supposedly help them align with how they feel they should be with their own body. No, it does the complete opposite. The narrative is a lie, and it's been proven as such. The The Karolinska University Hospital is a teaching hospital affiliated with Karolinska Institute in Stockholm, Sweden, with two major cities in the municipalities of Solna and, how do you pronounce that? Pedinch. The hospital network is the second largest in Sweden. And CBN News has also reported that a growing number of doctors, both in the U.S. and abroad, are questioning claims by the professional medical associations that puberty-blocking drugs are helpful in treating children who are confused about their gender. Again, I've stated this multiple times on my channel as well. Big Pharma is involved, so Big Pharma is going to push whatever's going to make them the most money. In the last decade, dozens of pediatric gender clinics have opened their doors across the country, offering children who question their gender identity a series of medical interventions known as LGBT proponents as gender affirmative treatment. And in 2019, the U.S. Professional Association for Transgender Health claimed in a letter to the U.S. Surgeon General that mental health care for children struggling with gender dysphoria is harmful, claiming it's likely harmful to offer psychiatric therapy for confused children. Okay. So, no, it's not, because, again, this is Big Pharma, this is, money's involved, big money, dark money. In order to properly walk out any struggle, something as deep as a broken identity, shame, whether it be body shame, just overall shame of yourself, self-loathing, which that's part of what goes into this trans stuff, is self-loathing. You hate who you physically are. You hate how you physically function, so you think medical intervention and trying to be the opposite sex or somewhere in between is going to help you alleviate that, when it does not. It makes it even worse because you have mutilated yourself. And that requires, to deal with those struggles before you even get to the point of self-destruction, does require extensive psychiatric therapy. It requires a lot of counseling. It requires a lot of self-introspection. It requires a lot of self-reflecting. It is important to teach people how to do this. A lot of people don't know how to do this anymore. And something as, because I've spoken with people about the themes of my channel, and I need to do an extensive video on this. So for me, my channel, I've had people question what my channel specifically was. The Chambers of My Heart. And the feedback I have gotten after explaining certain things was, it is pretty much, the Chambers of My Heart pretty much implies and alludes to deep self-reflection, deep self-introspection. And again, I'm going to do a whole separate video on this. I'm just not sure when or how I want to go about it. I haven't done so yet because there's some personal stuff yet to where I'm just going like, I don't know how to voice this stuff properly yet, or there's certain things I'm just not ready to talk about yet. Anyway, so, but because I've been able and taught how to self-reflect, have that self-introspection, I've been able to walk out very dark and personal struggles. I still have quite a bit to go, mind you. I'm not done yet. But this is something, and I've done this with the help of a little bit of counseling. My specific problem won't really go into it, but I haven't found the right counselor to help. But the people that I've been able to talk to, whether it's personal or some friends, I've been able to go, yeah, no, walking out those painful struggles. And this is what Big Pharma doesn't want to be done, because it takes away from the experimentation. It takes away from their honeypot. This is what they're doing to kids. Their experimentation on kids is their freaking honeypot. It's part of how they're making money off of this. Planned Parenthood stuck their nose into it. And I know I sound like I'm rambling or a broken record, but I cannot repeat this stuff enough. I cannot say this stuff enough. Because once you start looking into the spider webs, who's pushing it, why they're pushing it, history of Planned Parenthood, look into it. Margaret Sanger, it had to do with the colonization of certain populations, including Black people, and now they're going for trans medicine, which is another form of population control because it makes anybody who goes through that process permanently sterile. Hello? Are we waking up now? Anyway, let's continue because we're just about done here. But some pediatric endocrinologists are voicing concerns about the risk of transgender treatments for children. In 2020, CBN News interviewed Dr. Paul Harous. Now, for those of you who don't remember this guy, he was actually one of Harous. He was actually one of Jeff Younger's expert witnesses. He was there during the hearing, and I'm trying to remember his name, because his last name is Levine. No, not that Levine, not the freaking wacko in the White House. I want to say Stephen Levine. It's been a while, but yeah, Harous was one of Jeff Younger's expert witnesses. A pediatric researcher at the Washington University School of Medicine to address these concerns. As an endocrinologist, Harous specializes in studying the impact of hormones on the body and says parents should, at a minimum, know the science behind gender affirmative treatment is still experimental and it's not backed by the FDA. Again, the drugs that are used, puberty blockers, it was never meant to suppress puberty. That was originally used for girls who had their puberty come on way too fast, causing them problems. We went over this in the live stream when discussing stuff with Ann Georgelis. And then you have HRT, hormone replacement therapy, that was never intended to replace someone's natural hormone balance. That's originally used for seniors, old people, whose bodies can no longer produce the amount of hormones that they need in their bodies to properly function, not gain weight, and all that kind of things. So the way that this stuff is being used now is not even backed by the FDA at all. We really have no long-term data in using the intervention in children. We do have short-term studies that have very serious weaknesses and limitations, he explained. Although researchers have begun collecting data on these youth, Harous said it will be decades before scientists fully understand the risks and benefits. The question that needs to be asked, he said, if this turns out not to be a good approach, how many children are going to be harmed? And that is an excellent question, because honestly, just with the studies of birth control, how many different experimental drugs and ways that was implied and implemented. And if you don't do your research on that alone, say, for example, I'll use my experience with birth control as an example, and I believe I've talked about this on this channel as well. So I went on birth control quite a few years ago. I'm not on this stuff anymore. I refuse to touch the crap, and it has nothing to do with ethical reasons. It has everything to do with the side effects it does personally to my body, which I really don't freaking like. I still have some weight from the freaking depot shot that I've not gotten rid of, which kind of pisses me off. Anyway, so to continue, my body was naturally balanced, progesterone, estrogen, things like that. So when I started to take the depot, again, this is synthetic hormone. This is what's also being used for cross-sex hormones or HRT for trans people. Anyway, so when I took the depot, and I know it's not the exact same formula, you guys get what I'm saying. When I took the depot shot, my progesterone skyrocketed, and anybody who has read about the depot shot is told that it tricks your body into thinking it's pregnant. It tricks the female biological body into thinking it's pregnant. And so what it does, if your hormones are already naturally balanced and you take that synthetic progesterone, it's going to cause it to go all the way up. And what it does, because progesterone, what it does to the female body is it starts to make the uterine wall thicker and thicker and thicker. And so when that was going on with me, that was actually causing me to gain weight and keep the weight on. Like, I was going to the YMCA, I was exercising, and for the life of me, I could not figure out why I could not lose weight, because I wasn't properly educated about this stuff at the time, nor was I taught how to look into this stuff, because this was the first time I was even messing with anything like this. Anyway, so I'm like, okay, well, this is pissing me off. I don't like this. I'm done with this. So I tried to go into the patch. And for anybody who has done the sun and swap of birth control, because the patch, and I forget what the actual name of the patch was synthetic estrogen. It was a complete 180. So it started to cause me to crash. And I think I only used the patch like maybe a month before tossing the rest of the crap out, because I was just pretty much freaking done with it, because I was having other issues from the birth control. And so once my body started to recover and I just started to realize that I was no longer on this garbage. And I'm not saying birth control is complete garbage. It is being used for women who have hormonal imbalances, and it helps to balance those out. So that is a good thing. For me, it was a bad thing because my hormones were already balanced. Anyway, so when I switched to the patch, I started to physically crash. And when I got rid of all that stuff, my body, because of the buildup of progesterone, and I didn't have a full time to readjust to the patch, I'm not trying to be gross, but I pretty much had Shark Week all month. And it was to the point to where it made me anemic because I started to go tired. I actually went to a pharmacy to ask kind of what was going on. And they're like, well, sounds like you probably need some iron supplements. So I had to take some iron supplements for a while. No big deal. They're over the counter, but still, it's ridiculous to me for a full month. Full month. So I never touched the stuff again. And then to make matters worse, I actually got pregnant quite a few months later. And so when you have synthetic hormones in your body stops producing that amount of hormone because something is already doing the production for the body. So when I got pregnant, and this is like, I've never been able to get pregnant again, when I had what was called implantation bleeding, and it's different from having your monthly, ladies, but so when that happened, it flushed everything out. I went through several boxes of, oh my God, pregnancy tests. Sorry, I'm having a brain fart. And the line kept getting darker and darker and darker because that hormone was easier to detect the later I got into it. But once I had that implantation bleeding and I went to go take a test at a pregnancy center, it flushed up because my body was not making the level of progesterone that it used to. So that alone, birth control for me, had some really nasty side effects. So that's why I don't touch this stuff. So this is just birth control, and these are synthetic hormones again. Look at what birth control does to the body alone. Now, something else too, because they've tried to use experimentation birth control on 100 male patients. All those guys went freaking sterile. So having synthetic hormones in your body is actually quite dangerous and can be detrimental. And actually, speaking, going back to Depo, just real quick, is if you were on it too long, just for this one type of synthetic hormone alone, if you were on it for more than 2 years, depending on your female biological body, you can have menopause jump-started. No shit, there's been studies, and that's why a lot of women who stayed on the Depo for like 2 to 4 years found out, depending on their body, they had menopause starting when they tried to get pregnant, and they were infertile. And they had no freaking idea because they weren't properly educated. So what is going on right now with this trans medicine is people are purposefully not being properly educated. There's narratives being pushed, and if you come out with something that counterpoints these narratives, you are classified as transphobic or hateful or bigoted or whatever stupid bullshit they want to label you with. And they go, well, follow the science, scientifically, blah, 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 and gender's a spectrum, and sex is a spectrum, and no. None of this is even backed in proper science. They have tried to push certain things as scientific evidence. I remember there was a study that they tried to come out years ago where supposedly male brains have like more white matter and female brains have more dark matter. And no, a brain is a brain. It is influenced and structured by the hormones and multiple properties in either the male biological body or the female biological body. There is no such thing as a male brain. Itself, by itself, is a brain. So when you have a brain by itself, there's nothing to classify it as male or female, unlike the human body, which is classified through the genitalia, the skin cells, Because, like, for example, men's skin cells are harder, while women's are a bit more fair. And then you have the number of ribs, like rib cage. The freaking skeletons of both the female and male body are different. They have differences. A male's going to have fewer rib cages than a female one. A male skeleton is going to have a smaller pelvis, while a woman is going to have a wider pelvis. So there are biological differences down to our skeleton structure. So to say, oh, well, I feel this way, or scientists back up the way that I feel, no, it doesn't. And it's freaking crazy. I don't know how many ways I can say this, and and I've mentioned this so many times on my channel before, is had I been younger, if I was younger in this day and age, in like say my early adult years, like 19, 20, 21, and I didn't have the parents that I had, I would have more than likely destroyed myself because of my own struggles. I eventually one day want to tell my full story, and that involves a deep explanation of my chambers, but I'm not doing that today. This is the step in the right direction, and it's about time. This has been needing to happen for a while. If you guys have not looked into something called John Money, where all this freaking bullshit came from, look into it. When they talk about like stuff like queer theory, they don't like to cite him because he was a pedophile. Queer theory is laced with pedophilia. Pedophilia is at its foundation. So when they go to cite this, they try to say, there's one article that cited 2 female doctors or whatnot, but they were not the founders of all this freaking crap. John Money was. Anyway, I'm done. You guys have a wonderful evening, and I'll see you guys in the next one.